You thought spiritual awakening would set you free, that finally understanding the mechanics of your mind, the patterns that kept you trapped, the illusions you had been living under, would bring you peace. You did the work. You sat with your shadows, questioned your beliefs, dismantled the stories that no longer served you, and something did shift. You saw through things you could never unsee. The veil lifted, and for a moment, maybe you felt lighter, clearer, more awake than you had ever been. But then something unexpected happened. The joy you anticipated, the freedom you were promised, it never fully arrived. Instead, you found yourself standing in a strange new emptiness, watching others laugh at jokes that no longer land, pursue goals that now seem hollow, engage in conversations that feel like performances you can no longer participate in. The wine tastes flat. The movies bore you. The achievements that once motivated you now appear absurd, like watching children argue over who has the prettier sandcastle while the tide is coming in. You look around and wonder if you made a terrible mistake. Maybe ignorance really was bliss. Maybe you woke up only to discover that consciousness itself is the burden, that knowing is the curse, that seeing clearly means losing the capacity for simple joy. And nobody prepared you for this. All the spiritual teachings promised liberation, but what you got instead feels more like exile. This is the truth that almost no one talks about in spiritual circles, the dark passage that comes after the initial awakening, the place where increased consciousness does not bring peace but rather a profound and unsettling disillusionment with everything you once found meaningful. Hannah Arendt understood something crucial about the nature of thought and awareness that applies directly to this experience. She recognized that thinking, true thinking, separates us from the automatic flow of life. When you begin to examine your existence, when you step back from unreflective participation in the world and start to observe the machinery of your own mind and the patterns of the society around you, you create a distance. And in that distance, something essential changes. You cannot simply return to innocence once you have tasted knowledge. The question is not how to go back, but rather how to move forward into a more complete understanding of what awakening actually means, one that includes rather than denies this difficult middle passage. What you are experiencing is not a failure of your spiritual practice or evidence that you have somehow awakened incorrectly. It is, in fact, a predictable and necessary stage in the development of consciousness, one that reveals something profound about the relationship between awareness and suffering. The spiritual marketplace sells awakening as though it were a destination, a final state of perpetual bliss and clarity. But consciousness does not work that way. Consciousness is not a light switch that goes from off to on, darkness to permanent illumination. It is more like a muscle that, once exercised, cannot return to its previous weakness, but whose strength brings with it new and unexpected burdens. When you awaken to the constructed nature of meaning, when you see through the stories that organize social life, when you recognize the mechanisms by which you and others create and sustain illusions of purpose, you do not thereby escape meaning and purpose. You simply become aware of their contingency, their fragility, their arbitrary nature. And this awareness changes everything. The joy you have lost is not the joy of the enlightened, but the joy of the unconscious. It is the pleasure that comes from unreflective immersion in activities whose meaning you never questioned. When you were asleep, so to speak, you could throw yourself fully into the pursuit of status, the accumulation of experiences, the performance of social roles, the consumption of entertainment, without the nagging background awareness that these things are ultimately empty of inherent significance. You could laugh at the comedy without simultaneously seeing it as a distraction from existential dread. You could pursue the promotion without recognizing it as a culturally conditioned desire that will not satisfy the deeper hunger even if achieved. You could enjoy the party without feeling like an anthropologist observing tribal rituals from the outside. Unconsciousness provided a kind of protection, a buffer between you and the raw fact of existence. Consciousness removes that buffer, and suddenly you are standing naked before reality, unable to participate in the comforting illusions that make ordinary life bearable for most people. This is where many seekers get stuck, in what we might call the desert of disillusionment. You are too awake to return to sleep, but not yet awake enough to find joy in consciousness itself. You have deconstructed the false meanings, but have not yet discovered authentic meaning. You have seen through the games, but have not yet learned how to play with full awareness that they are games. You are between two worlds, the world of naive participation and the world of conscious engagement, and this between space is deeply uncomfortable. It is the space Arendt would recognize as the gap opened by thinking, the interruption of automatic living that thinking necessarily creates. When you think, truly think, you stop the flow. You step out of the river to examine it. And once you have stepped out, wading back in feels different, false, impossible. But here is what you must understand. This disillusionment, this loss of naive joy, is not the end of the journey. It is the necessary middle. You are mourning the death of a previous self, the self who could be satisfied with surfaces, who could find meaning in the prescribed narratives, who could participate fully in the social performances without the weight of self-awareness. That self is gone. You killed it through the very act of waking up, and now you stand in the wreckage of your former life, surrounded by activities and relationships and goals that no longer animate you, wondering if awakening was worth the price. This is grief. Real grief. You are grieving the loss of innocence, the loss of easy belonging, the loss of simple pleasures. And our culture gives you no framework for this grief, because our culture does not acknowledge that consciousness can be a burden, that awareness can steal joy, that waking up might make you lonelier, not freer. If this perspective is opening something up for you, consider subscribing. I explore these territories every week, and I would love to have you along for the journey. The spiritual teachings that promise only light and love and bliss are lying to you, not because their authors are malicious, but because they are speaking from a place beyond this middle passage, or because they have never actually walked through it themselves. They skip over the desert. They go from the first flush of awakening, which can indeed be euphoric, to some imagined state of permanent equanimity, without acknowledging the long, dark stretch in between where everything you thought awakening would give you seems to have been taken away instead. Or they speak only to the moment of breakthrough, the dramatic shifts, without discussing what it is like to live day to day with heightened consciousness in a world that is still largely asleep. They do not tell you that you will feel alien in your own life, that conversations will become exhausting performances, that you will watch people you love chase mirages and be unable to convince them they are mirages without sounding arrogant or condescending. They do not prepare you for the isolation of seeing what others do not see, the fatigue of maintaining appearances, the strange doubling of experience where you are simultaneously participating in life and watching yourself participate with detached awareness. I know many of you watching this have never told anyone what you are really experiencing. You have been carrying this alone, maybe for years, thinking something is fundamentally wrong with you. But here is what I want you to understand. The moment you name this, the moment you acknowledge it out loud, even just in a comment, something shifts. You stop being alone with it. So let me ask you directly, when did you first notice that the things that used to bring you joy no longer do? When did you realize you could not go back to who you were before? I want you to share in the comments, not because I need engagement, but because someone else watching this needs to see your words. They need to know they are not the only one. And if you cannot find the words right now, if it feels too heavy to articulate, just type this. This is my experience too. That is it. Just those 4 words. Because when you do, you create permission for dozens of others to say it too. Your honesty, your willingness to be seen in your struggle, it helps break the silence that keeps all of us isolated. So comment below. Tell me where you are in this. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in what you are feeling. Arendt wrote about the life of the mind as distinct from the life of action, and in doing so she illuminated something crucial about what happens when you develop the capacity for sustained reflection. The vita contemplativa, the contemplative life, is not simply a peaceful retreat from the world. It is an active and often agonizing engagement with questions that have no final answers. To think is to be in dialogue with yourself, to question your own assumptions, to hold opposing ideas in tension without resolution. And this internal dialogue, once begun, cannot be easily silenced. You have awakened the thinking part of yourself, and that part will not go back to sleep. It will continue to examine, to question, to see through, whether you want it to or not. This is both the gift and the curse of consciousness. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unsee what you have seen. The patterns of illusion that once held you are now transparent, and transparency, it turns out, is not always liberating. Sometimes it is simply exhausting. The world continues to operate according to its rhythms, its values, its unexamined assumptions, and you are expected to participate as though you still believe in them. You are expected to care about things that now seem trivial. You are expected to pursue goals that now appear meaningless. You are expected to maintain relationships that no longer feel authentic. And so you split yourself. There is the part of you that goes through the motions, that performs the role, that engages in the expected behaviors, and there is the part that watches, that knows it is a performance, that feels the disconnect between what you are doing and what you actually believe or care about. This splitting is exhausting. It creates a kind of internal friction, a constant low-level dissonance that wears you down over time. You are living in two worlds simultaneously, the world as it appears to others and the world as it appears to you, and the gap between these worlds creates a profound loneliness. This is the loneliness of consciousness, and it is a real loneliness, not something you are imagining or creating through negative thinking. When you see what others do not see, when you question what others take for granted, when you cannot participate fully in the shared illusions that bind communities together, you are by definition outside the circle of unreflective belonging. You are the one at the party who is aware that it is a party, that everyone is playing roles, that the laughter is partially performance, that the conversations are following scripts, and this awareness makes genuine connection harder, not easier. Because connection requires a certain amount of unself-conscious participation, a willingness to lose yourself in the moment, to forget that you are performing, to believe, at least temporarily, in the reality of the shared fiction. But you can no longer forget. The watcher in you never stops watching, and so you are alone, even in crowds, perhaps especially in crowds. The great irony is that this loneliness, this loss of joy, this burden of consciousness, is itself a kind of teaching, though not the one you were expecting. You thought awakening would teach you how to be happy, how to transcend suffering, how to exist in a state of perpetual peace. But what it is actually teaching you is something more subtle and more valuable. It is teaching you about the nature of consciousness itself, about the price of awareness, about what it means to be a thinking being in a world that mostly does not think. It is showing you that joy is not the goal, that happiness is not the point, that the purpose of awakening is not to feel better, but to see more clearly. And seeing clearly is its own reward, even when what you see is difficult, even when clarity brings pain rather than pleasure. Arendt understood that thinking is not a means to an end, but an activity that is valuable in itself, regardless of where it leads or what it produces. To think is to be fully human, to exercise the capacity that distinguishes us from mere biological organisms following instinct and conditioning. And this capacity, once awakened, does not promise comfort. It promises something else entirely. It promises the possibility of living consciously, of making choices with awareness rather than automatically, of being present to your own life rather than sleepwalking through it. The loss of naive joy is the price you pay for this possibility, and it is a real price, a steep price, one that you are right to grieve, but it is also a price worth paying, though you may not see this yet. What you are experiencing now, this joyless awareness, this clear-eyed disillusionment, is not permanent. It is a phase, a passage, a threshold you are crossing. You are learning to live with consciousness rather than despite it. You are discovering that joy does not require ignorance, that meaning does not require illusion, that engagement does not require belief in ultimate significance. These discoveries take time. They cannot be rushed. You cannot skip the desert and arrive directly at the oasis. You must walk through the dry places, the places where everything that once sustained you has dried up, where the old sources of meaning have run dry. You must feel the full weight of consciousness, the full burden of awareness, before you can learn to carry it lightly. And this is where you are now, learning to carry a weight you never asked for. a weight that was supposed to set you free, but instead feels like it might crush you. But here is what happens if you stay with it, if you do not try to go back to sleep and do not fall into cynical nihilism. Gradually, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. The burden begins to feel less like a burden and more like a gift. The clarity that stole your joy begins to reveal a different kind of joy, not the joy of unconscious immersion, but the joy of conscious presence. You start to notice that while you cannot lose yourself in the old distractions, you can find yourself in the present moment, in the simple fact of being alive, aware, capable of thought. You discover that meaning does not have to be ultimate to be real, that you can create and embrace provisional meanings, temporary purposes, knowing full well they are constructions, and find genuine satisfaction in them. You learn to play the game with full awareness that it is a game, and this awareness, rather than ruining the game, makes it more interesting, more alive, more honest. This is what Arendt meant by the examined life, the life that is aware of itself, that thinks about its own thinking, that acts with consciousness of the contingency and unpredictability of action. It is not a life of certainty or permanent peace. It is a life of ongoing questioning, ongoing awareness, ongoing engagement with the fundamental strangeness and mystery of existence. And it is, in its way, joyful, though the joy is different from anything you knew before awakening. It is the joy of being awake, the joy of seeing clearly, the joy of living honestly. It is a quieter joy, a deeper joy, a joy that does not depend on circumstances or achievements or the opinions of others. It is the joy of being present to your own life, of meeting reality directly, rather than through the filter of illusion. You are not there yet. You are still in the desert, still grieving what you have lost, still struggling with the weight of consciousness. And that is okay. That is exactly where you should be. The desert is part of the path, not a detour from it. The disillusionment is necessary. The loss of naive joy creates space for conscious joy. The death of the old self makes room for a new self, one that can live awake rather than asleep. But you cannot force this process. You cannot think your way out of it or spiritual practice your way through it. You can only walk through it, one step at a time, feeling everything you feel, allowing yourself to grieve what needs to be grieved, trusting that the path continues even when you cannot see where it leads. And here is something else you need to hear. The isolation you feel, the sense that you are alone in this experience, is partly true and partly illusion. You are alone in the sense that no one can walk this path for you, no one can carry your consciousness for you, no one can make this easier or faster than it is. This is your journey, your desert, your dark night of the soul. But you are not alone in the sense that countless others have walked this same path, felt this same loss, struggled with this same burden. Throughout history, those who have awakened to consciousness have encountered this middle passage, this place where awareness brings suffering rather than relief. The mystics called it the dark night. The philosophers called it nihilism. The psychologists call it existential depression. Whatever name you give it, it is a real phenomenon, a predictable stage in the development of consciousness, and recognizing that others have been here before you, that you are not uniquely broken or uniquely failed in your awakening, can provide some comfort. What makes this passage particularly difficult in our current moment is that we live in a culture that denies the value of suffering, that pathologizes sadness, that treats any state other than happiness as a problem to be solved. We are told constantly that we should be optimizing our lives, maximizing our joy, pursuing our bliss. And when consciousness robs us of easy joy, when awareness makes bliss impossible, we think something is wrong with us. We think we are depressed, that we need medication or therapy or a new spiritual practice. And while therapy can be helpful, while medication has its place, while spiritual practices have value, none of these things will resolve the fundamental issue, which is that you are awake in a world that mostly sleeps, and wakefulness is inherently uncomfortable. The discomfort is not a bug, it is a feature. It is the price of consciousness, and no amount of self-improvement or spiritual bypassing will make it go away. What will make it bearable, eventually, is integration. This is the key word, the missing piece in most spiritual teachings. Awakening is not about transcending your humanity, leaving the body, escaping the ego, achieving some pure state of consciousness untouched by the messiness of existence. It is about integrating consciousness with embodiment, awareness with action, clarity with compassion. It is about learning to be fully awake and fully human at the same time. And this integration cannot happen while you are still trying to get rid of the parts of yourself that are struggling, still trying to fix the sadness or overcome the disillusionment. Integration requires acceptance, radical acceptance of exactly where you are right now. It requires you to stop fighting the loss of joy and start grieving it properly. It requires you to acknowledge that you are between worlds, that you have lost something real and valuable, that awakening has costs as well as benefits. Only when you stop trying to return to who you were, stop trying to force yourself to feel joy you do not feel, stop performing happiness for others or for yourself, can the real work of integration begin. And that work is not dramatic or exciting. It is slow and subtle. It happens in quiet moments, when you notice that you are present to your experience without judgment, when you engage in an activity not because it will make you happy, but because it is what is in front of you to do. When you have a genuine conversation, not because you believe it matters ultimately, but because the person in front of you is real and present and deserving of your attention. Integration happens when you stop dividing your experience into spiritual and mundane, awakened and unawakened, meaningful and meaningless, and simply meet what is with clear awareness and open presence. This does not mean you become passive or resigned. It does not mean you stop growing or questioning or seeking truth. It means you stop seeking from a place of lack, stop trying to achieve some future state that will finally make you whole. You recognize that you are already whole, that consciousness is not something you acquire but something you are, that awareness is your nature, not your accomplishment. And from this recognition, a different kind of action becomes possible, action that is not driven by the need to escape yourself or fix yourself or prove yourself. Action that arises simply from being awake, from seeing what is, from responding to what is needed in the moment. Arendt wrote about action as the highest form of the vita activa, the active life, and she distinguished it from mere labor or work. Action, in her framework, is what we do when we bring something new into the world, when we exercise our capacity for beginning, for initiating, for creating. And action always involves others. It always takes place in the public realm, the space between people, and its consequences are always unpredictable. You cannot control how your actions will be received or what effects they will have. But you can act anyway, not from certainty, but from the courage to engage with the world despite uncertainty. This is what it means to live consciously, to act from awareness rather than conditioning, to participate in life without the illusion that you control outcomes. The joy that was stolen from you, the naive joy of unconscious participation, will not return. But a different joy waits on the other side of this passage, the joy of conscious participation, of meeting life directly, of being present to what is, rather than lost in fantasies of what should be. This joy is quieter, more subtle, easier to miss. It does not announce itself with fireworks. It appears in small moments, moments when you are so present to what is happening that the question of whether it makes you happy becomes irrelevant. Moments when you are washing dishes and you notice the warmth of the water, the way light reflects off the soap bubbles, the simple satisfaction of cleaning something, and you are just there, fully there, not wanting it to be different, not thinking about what comes next, not divided between the you who is washing dishes and the you who is watching you wash dishes. Just washing dishes, just alive, just aware. These moments of undivided presence are what consciousness makes possible, but they cannot be forced. They arise naturally when you stop fighting what is, when you accept that you are awake and there is no going back to sleep, when you grieve what you have lost and open to what remains. What remains is always more than you think. Beneath the loss of illusions, beneath the death of naive meanings, beneath the loneliness of heightened awareness, there is still life, still presence, still the simple miracle of being conscious in a universe that mostly is not conscious. And that miracle, once you can see it clearly, is enough. It does not need to be dressed up in spiritual concepts or ultimate meanings. It does not need to make you happy in any conventional sense. It simply is. And your awareness of it, your capacity to meet it directly, is its own justification. So the truth that steals your joy after you wake up is this: consciousness is not a gift that makes life easier. It is a burden that makes life harder, clearer, more honest, more lonely, more alive. It strips away the comforts of unreflective participation and leaves you standing naked before existence, unable to hide in the old stories, unable to lose yourself in the old distractions. And this is devastating. It is a real loss, but it is also paradoxically exactly what you asked for when you began this journey. You wanted truth. You got truth. You wanted to wake up. You woke up. The fact that waking up does not look like what you imagined, does not feel like what you were promised, does not make you happy in the way you expected, does not mean you failed. It means you succeeded. You are awake. And now you must learn to live awake, to carry consciousness without being crushed by it, to find meaning without requiring ultimate meaning, to engage fully without believing fully, to be present without the illusion that presence solves anything. If what I am sharing here resonates with something you have been feeling, something you have not quite been able to name, then I want you to know you are not alone in this. There are many of us exploring these questions, sitting with these uncomfortable truths, learning to see in new ways. I create these videos for people who are ready to go deeper, who are not satisfied with surface answers, who want to understand rather than just feel better temporarily. If that is you, consider subscribing, not because you need another channel to follow, but because this journey of understanding yourself, of waking up to what is real, it helps to have companions along the way. People who will not offer you easy fixes but will sit with you in the questions. I will be here every week with another exploration, another perspective, another thread to pull on. And I would be honored to have you here as part of this community of seekers and thinkers. So if this feels right, hit that subscribe button. And if you found value in this particular exploration, let me know in the comments what resonated most with you. Your reflections often illuminate things I had not considered. You are in the desert now, and the desert is real. But the desert is not forever. You will cross it not by going faster or trying harder, but by accepting where you are, by feeling what you feel, by allowing the process to unfold at its own pace. You will discover that consciousness, for all its burdens, for all the joy it has stolen, offers something more valuable than joy. It offers presence. It offers clarity. It offers the possibility of living as a fully awake human being, meeting reality directly, acting from awareness rather than conditioning. And when you reach the other side, when you have integrated what you have learned in this passage, you will understand that the truth that stole your joy was also the truth that set you free, not from suffering but from the need to avoid suffering, not from uncertainty but from the need for certainty, not from yourself but from the illusion of who you thought you were. You will see that you have not lost something essential, but gained something essential, the capacity to be present to your own life, to live consciously, to think, to question, to be.